Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this new Techno Crime Fighters Forum. This is the 40th episode of our panel that we've been running for quite a while, I guess for 40 episodes. That's 40 weeks. So we're very glad you've joined us this morning, and it's close to the end of the year. So today what we're going to be doing is kind of an end of the year kind of conversation, kind of looking back on some of the things we've talked about this year, trying to figure out what exactly we've accomplished, and moving forward, looking forward to the future, and talking a little bit about what we plan to do. We also have a little bit of news here and there to impart, and we will do so. Again, for newcomers who are joining us for the very first time, Techno Crime Fighters Forum is just a panel of women who are speaking out about the incredible crimes against humanity and atrocities being committed on civilian populations around the world, particularly in the US and Europe, but also elsewhere, by intelligence agencies running under cover of surveillance activities, and by military groups engaging in weapons testing in the realm of non-lethal weapons testing and neurotechnology weapons testing, as well as all sorts of dark cybernetics and artificial intelligence ventures. So we've been doing this for quite a while now, and we do intend to continue because our intention is to make all of this information very, very public and bring world attention to these absolute atrocities that are being committed in the name of surveillance and national security everywhere around the planet. So on that note, good morning, Karen. Good morning, Katherine.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Let me turn the floor to Karen. I should actually mention, Karen is an NSA whistleblower. She's been with the NSA for 28 years. She's a senior intelligence analyst with top secret clearance who is retired. And so we're very privileged to have her on the team with us week after week. Dr. Katherine Horton is a particle physicist, research fellow from Oxford, and a former CERN research scientist. Very privileged again to have her with us. I'm, of course, Romola D. I'm a writer and journalist, and just working together to expose these matters. So, Karen, perhaps we can turn the floor over to you, and you can give us
all right.
the news.
Okay, well, one of the first things that we wanted to discuss is very many people are trying to keep up with Melanie Vrichon and the baby kidnapping that was imposed upon her by Erasmus Hospital in Brussels. And so what we would like to tell you is that the last definitive word on the subject right now is a recent article that Romola has written. So if you want to get up to date with the details, then please take a look at that on everydayconcern.net. And that will be the last news for a while, because Melanie is under tremendous pressure to be quiet, or we won't let you see your baby, essentially is what it is. So she will be under duress, volunteering to go into the hospital, psychiatric hospital, to be with her baby for 30 days so that they can observe her to make sure that the baby is safe with her, which of course the baby is safe with her. But she, like I said, she is under tremendous psychological pressure to do that, and she has opted to go silent and concentrate on bonding with her baby, and we can't blame her. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it's going to be for a while. So if and when we can tell you and give you updates, we will, but as of today, this is the last bit of news about this that we'll be talking about. And again, go to Romola's latest article for all the details that we're able to give you at this point.
Thank you so much, Karen. Absolutely. Yes, the article has everything. It was released last night. It has all of the latest information. And, that is literally the situation, what Karen spelled out. We're all, of course, tremendously unsettled about this. And no doubt we'll be able at some point to revisit the subject openly. But for a little while, we are kind of going to have to go dark just to protect, Melanie's own interests as she's conveyed them to us. So,
well, I would like to add that I am personally forced to accept that, even though I think that publicity is the best measure. I was also forced to take down the 20 episodes of the German version of Techno Crime Fighters Forum, I don't think because Melanie wanted to, but because she was literally blackmailed by Hospital Erasmus. She said, oh, that's a strategy with that, you know, to get back her baby. Well, I don't think that panned out. But one of the things we can say is that Hospital Erasmus disapproves of all publicity. The courts disapprove of all publicity, which is not exactly what you would expect if everything would be quite kosher, shall we say. And I would also just for the record put down that the lawyer for Melanie did not submit my written affidavit for the entire 2 months that the baby has been held hostage, even though I was the scientist who analyzed the throat implant, and even though I was the main witness at the scene. There was a written testimony from the very first court hearing that has never ever reached a judge. And again, people probably followed the interview that we had with Melanie and Alfred Weber, who is a war crimes tribunal judge. And he live on air advised that I submit a testimony. And I wanted to. I mean, Melanie and her lawyer have already a long testimony, but they wanted a shorter one, and I was willing to submit a shorter one. However, in the end, the lawyer for Melanie wanted me to write statements that are not true. And in the end, she said that I'm not allowed to use the word shocking in my witness testimony. And that was the last thing. At that point, I decided that I can't write the version of my statement that the lawyer wants me to, because it simply would not be true. Because shocking is every second word in my statement if I ever write one. So I want people to know that this is the situation and this is how it came about. I think at this point, so far, I've been blamed for the entire situation all throughout, even though there were extraordinary CIA renditions, right, between midnight and 2 a.m. and extreme mistreatment of Melanie that I don't think would have happened if Belgian intelligence, Jacques Race, wouldn't have had his hand in it. So I think by now, after 2 months of not having any say or any sort of, nothing written ever reached the judge, I don't think I can be blamed for the current situation. I would just rather say it would be nice if maybe a judge at some point would actually get a written testimony from the main witness and the main scientist who analyzed the throat implant and can prove that this is a synthetic implant. I think at some point a judge would benefit perhaps from my statement. Perhaps, but the situation is not ideal. I personally still would like to, record online live that I feel that what has happened at Hospital Erasmus is a criminal conspiracy. I really think so. It is a criminal conspiracy, and I personally advise every expectant mother to give Hospital Erasmus and what might be Masonic or intelligence agency networks the widest berth possible. Birth written with B-E-R-T-H, literally. It's, I think, a disaster,
And I'd like to add, because of the situation as it stands currently, this does not mean that we are not going to talk about the subject.
Yeah.
My intention with my first article, really succeeding all of the press releases at the time that this was happening, my intention with that article really was to open the subject for a wider audience and to put it into reportage, put down into reportage what has gone down here. So my intention really had been to do a series of articles, and I still have that intention. Clearly, we're not going to be able to cover what's going on currently and moving on forward because of privacy interests. But we can most certainly talk about everything that has come up to this point. And I've also started a spotlight on Psychiatry Subverted. And Dr. Horton has been with me on one podcast on that subject, where we spoke about various issues surrounding both Melanie's case and Frederic Laroche's case in France. And we are going to continue the subject. I'm going to continue my spotlight on Psychiatry Subverted through my Need to Know reports on Saturday mornings. I hope to have other people on that show to talk about the subject. This does not in any way deter me from my interest in pursuing this spotlight on psychiatry that's been subverted and that's masquerading in our societies as the ultimate authority and in acting in most authoritarian ways to suppress people and destroy people's lives. So, I think psychiatry needs to be put under a microscope, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to encourage other journalists to do it as well. So that definitely will continue. The focus in Erasmus Hospital and everything that has gone down here will also continue. So that's from my end. So I think, between us, it's impossible for us to give up our own interests and our own focuses as professionals, as journalists and as analysts and scientists.
And also, it is impossible for us to give up our real true care for for Melanie and her baby. And absolutely. And I think what has transpired, however, is that Hospital Erasmus and all legal counsel and judges involved rather dislike having their name bandied around in public. And again, that is rather surprising, given that in the olden days, courts used to be a public forum where things could be discussed. So if there's nothing, if they haven't got anything to hide, what could they have possibly to fear? Also, they are more than welcome to actually issue public statements and correct everything that we're saying. And also, and this is now directly to everything involved in Brussels, the judges, the lawyers, and Hospital Erasmus, it is also true that we are all writing our own court cases. And given that I was physically assaulted in Hospital Erasmus and also in Brussels, it can still feature in my own witness testimony that I'm at least allowed to submit to my own court case. And that will feature rather, in a big manner, because I think whatever these people are doing, they will become one of the 21st century case studies on how really not to do it.
And, on that subject, I should echo exactly what you were saying, Katherine, because I think all public institutions who are indeed engaging in precisely what they are supposed to be engaging in should have no fear that journalists come forward and, write anything about them. They should have no fear if they're merely engaging in public service, as the court system. If the court system were not corrupt, it would have nothing to fear. If judges were not corrupt, they would have nothing to fear. If judges had no connections with underground pipelines into child trafficking rings, they would have nothing to fear. But when a juvenile court or when any family court steps forward and takes a child away from its mother in our societies, we as humanity have a right. In fact, we cannot but remark on what is happening. We cannot but remark that it is indeed happening, and we cannot but look into the matter further, investigate, explore, and we have the right to write about it, to analyze it, and to speak about it. That is what is going on over here. So what Erasmus Hospital has done really has thrown open their own doors for deep scrutiny by people all around the world, by taking this child away from a completely responsible, extremely competent mother who is a leader in the field of human rights. By taking that child away, Erasmus Hospital itself has opened its doors for deep scrutiny of their own actions. So that's what I would like to say to anybody in Erasmus Hospital, anybody in the juvenile court system who is concerned that I'm writing articles mentioning the names of judges, mentioning the names of doctors and psychiatrists who have been involved in this story. That's what I would like to say. These are actions that astonish and horrify humanity. Vast numbers of us reading the story are absolutely horrified at what has gone down here, at the incredible false diagnosis, at the incredible haste with which this diagnosis was rendered, and the catastrophic consequences of this diagnosis by Erasmus Hospital psychiatrists, which resulted in the taking of this child away from her mother, traumatizing the child, traumatizing the mother, and creating a train of other horrific circumstances, some of which I have put down in the article already, and some of which are yet to come. So to be explored, hopefully, I mean. Yeah. So, it's inevitable when this kind of stuff happens, people are going to stand out and say, this is ridiculous over here. So, and this is the power of the fourth estate, as Alfred Weber pointed out to us on that other podcast the other night, Katherine, that, this is why journalism is important. We need journalists. We need vigilant citizens. We need people putting our public institutions under a microscope. We need to hold people accountable. We need to hold institutions accountable, intelligence agencies accountable, security agencies accountable, anybody in power. We need to hold them accountable, because if you cannot hold anybody accountable, then what you can expect is abuse of power.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we are seeing today.
Oh, yes, in the most egregious fashion. And it is, again, the most common abuse of power is, as always, directed against women and children. And if these people truly believe that young mothers, women and children are the biggest threat to society, which is why they need to be incarcerated and separated from each other, they've got their worldview upside down. And the one thing that I just would like to add to the list that Ramola had is we also need to put lawyers under scrutiny. Because I have now seen the legal counsel for several high-profile victims, and not one lawyer has, how to put it, impressed me. Not one. In fact, I would rather think that the man off the street would have done a better job every single time. And these people are highly paid and seem to be highly incompetent, and somehow seem to be rather aiding the other side. So Karen Hudis a long while ago pointed out that there's something called the Bar Association, and just to focus on the name for a bit, the Bar Association. What exactly are they barring us from, I would like to ask? Is it justice by any chance? But there's such a thing as a bar association, which kind of somehow, has a whiff of a cartel. And the fact that the prices for lawyers are so high kind of supports the cartel notion somewhat in terms of systems analysis. However, what has also gone down today is absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. I'm not sure if I can say more details about that, because I've just heard it second or third hand, but it involves severe malpractice by lawyers, one way or another. And whichever lawyer was committing severe malpractice, they just got themselves the entry ticket to, I think, the biggest war crimes tribunal since the Second World War. Congratulations for that, whichever lawyer that was. And that's something that we will clear up. But yes, I also warn absolutely every victim, specifically of lawyers, because, to this point, I have not met an honest lawyer. That's the sad truth. That's the sad truth. Oh, well, there's Alfred Weber, who actually helped us a lot on Sunday, but he's a judge, so okay.
I think they must be honest. There must be honest and, well-meaning and hardworking lawyers out there.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to find them, it's true.
If CERN found the Higgs boson, maybe one day we'll find an honest lawyer, but not sure.
Yeah. So on that note, perhaps we can put the subject to rest and for now and move on. I know that Katherine has a wonderful document that she's prepared that she can introduce to us and tell us more about. I should actually say before we go on to that we can't, this show is not going to be a super long show. We're going to close a little bit earlier than usual because I have to go. But while we're here, we have to hear Karen's new document.
Oh, I'll have to find it. Why don't you guys go on for a second, and then I will get back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the other things that we wanted to talk about, was Section 702, which is, again, coming up for renewal or expiry. And as we know, on Twitter, there's been quite a buzz about it, because of course you have the people on the Hill desperate to pass this, and the NSA trying to push it through. But exactly what are they pushing through? They are pushing through mass warrantless surveillance on everybody, on all Americans, and by extension via the NSA's agreements with all of the different other countries in the globe, with other countries as well. So that basically mass warrantless surveillance of every citizen on the planet is going to continue. And actually, that's something to talk about. Is it just mass warrantless surveillance of, phones, emails, or is it more?
Absolutely. If Karen needs some time to find the documents, I actually also would like to interject just very briefly that we also, when we're talking about surveillance, we always have this image of, oh yes, it's the good guys really trying to find bad guys. And they seem to have an awful lot of money, and they don't seem to find that many bad guys. So the systems analyst, I would like to say that if you want to fight terrorism, and like in the UK, the MI5 budget doubled after 2003. So you have a system where the budget doubled, and it's meant to, and they said the budget doubled, the manpower tripled, and operations went up by a factor of 5. What's that? Quintupled. Okay. So in terms of systems, you have one system, fighting terrorism, and then you double the budget. You've got 3 times as many people doing 5 times as many things. Why did terrorism go up exactly? What's the explanation? Like, wouldn't you expect that it at least dipped down like a bit? Doesn't make any sense. And by how much did terrorism go up? Didn't we have like 7/7 in the UK, and then a series of just funky terrorist attacks that seemed to look like they were organized by MI5? So could it possibly be that all this money goes into organizing terrorist events? And if so, how the hell can this be, right? And if we have an organization that seems to organize terrorist events, and we double the budget, and then of course we do get probably twice as many terrorist events, right? Or better terrorist events, even looking even nicer on CNN or, the BBC. But then is it a good thing if this organization organizing terrorist events to look good on CNN can also see everything that we're doing? Are they not going to then start organizing terrorist events in our own private lives, perhaps? That just as a question,
Excellent point. And, that actually, kind of contextualizes and frames this discussion really well, because if you bring it down to, sort of brass tacks, and you understand that, the CIA is creating ISIS and creating Al-Qaeda and running, arms running rackets and drug running rackets and so forth, and helping to, support and bolster those terrorist groups on the one side. And then you have, some other groups, some other intelligence agencies, and the military as well, rushing to protect countries from ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And, tons of money thrown into equipping the militaries of the world so that they can fight ISIS and Al-Qaeda. You've got that set up. And then inside the country, inside our country, for instance, in the US, you've got the FBI running these parallel construction and these false flag ops that, have different terminology to describe them, no doubt, and internal memos. Along with the DHS, I understand surveillance role players are involved, crisis actors, to set up little crisis theater and crisis situations, whereby, unfortunately, sometimes people do get killed. But there's a reason that we have to get involved in this and start being worried about these drills. These are, after all, terror drills. We have to pay attention to these terror drills because we need them as a nation. If we didn't have terror drills, we'd never know how to deal with terror, because it's coming down the pike, etc. So there's this web of deceit, it looks like, and there's each of these agencies are kind of feeding into each other's pathology and setting up incredibly deceitful scenarios, manipulative scenarios, whereby the people who are manipulated are us. It's the people on the outside, and whose money is literally being used to kind of fund this imbroglio of deceit, these networks of deceit. So that, unfortunately, is the sort of pathologically insane situation that we find ourselves in around the world. And that's what surveillance has become. That's one aspect of surveillance. And of course, the other aspect of surveillance is the one that you and I are very familiar with on the show. It has to do with covert surveillance, what's not spoken about in mainstream media, which is merely functioning as the government propaganda arm of the government and of various, agencies who are engaging in electronic and biometric surveillance. Again, these are words that are hiding the electronic control grid, electromagnetic weapons use, through-wall radar surveillance.
Yeah, and they're also, not to forget, they're also hiding the fact that we have got surveillance chips in our genitals and in our breasts that are accessed every single time we leave the house, and even when we are sitting in our study, non-stop. So we have a level of surveillance whereby Swiss Intel, or any other intelligence agency knows what's going on with your genitals, which we all will agree is paramount for national security.
Yeah, right.
Well,
the bodily surveillance, exactly. To implant people covertly, and
Yeah,
then to
it's
say we are
disgusting.
surveilling them.
No. Well, you never know what a loose breast will do. Could bring down a nation.
Exactly. Looking through history, Karen, I think, yeah, maybe they're onto something, you know, that's the power of women. Maybe that's the worst enemy of, you know, all these intel agencies.
We've got to
There we
surveil
go.
so closely, we've got to implant, because you see, that's the point at which surveillance crosses into human trafficking. So literally people who
Yeah.
are implanted have been human trafficked. And what have they been trafficked into? They've been trafficked into medical experimentation, neuroexperimentation, and weapons testing projects. So this is the other half of it, you know, that has to be brought out into daylight and has to be covered. Mainstream media is keeping it very, very undercover. But, you know, this is why we're here, to talk about it. And hopefully next year we will do a lot more to blow this out of the water. The kind of weapons testing, the kind of, you know, we're also talking about medical implants that are being implanted in people's bodies. These are actual medical implants, you know, neurostimulators, the kind of things that are now showing up in the industry as diabetes monitoring implants, kind of pacemakers. People have reported heart implants, you know. So, and these implants are actually being found. They are being radiologically scanned and they are being found. So we are not talking at this point theoretically. We're talking about actual physical material evidence that these implants are being found in people's bodies.
Well, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like giving your not so well behaved son, 13-year-old, who you know has developmental problems or mental problems, a toy that you just happen to be working on for the Army, you know, and it mimics something that an Army weapon would do, and telling him, oh, hey, Junior, why don't you just take this out and shoot your friends with it and then let me know what happens? And then I'll tell the Army. It's just ridiculous that they have developed this technology to help people. And the very first thing they think to do with it is to destroy people. And like I said, I am incensed that the medical companies think of healthy human beings, which we are blessed to be, or we were blessed to be, as worthless. We are not benefiting their bottom line of profit, so therefore we exist for them to experiment on, so that they can make all their money on the extraordinarily unfortunate people who are either injured, or they are born with birth defects, or develop some kind of disease that these people find very lucrative. So we are just basically thrown in an expendable caste, you know, like we've got a caste system or something. But you know, my anger sometimes gives way to maybe high sarcasm, which is basically what led me to the one final. You know, I've been trying to get a one-page flyer for people to use, and so this one seems to be something that people like. But I've entitled it Department of Homeland Security. I have DHS very prominently on it, and I have it titled Make Work for Morons Program.
Perfect.
So to get to the point, all right, it says, are you hopelessly stupid, lacking in any skills whatsoever, greedy, lazy, cowardly, sneaky, dishonest, a natural whore that would sell out anyone for money, even your country and the Constitution, a natural bully, but only if you can hide among about 100 plus others? Do you lack the higher human sensibilities of compassion, justice, fair play? Are you a racist, a chauvinist pig, a deviant? Then the Department of Homeland Security has a job for you. And then I go on to describe, in order to expand the police state and undermine democratic rule to trick simple-minded, gullible fools into replacing their American-style democracy with a totalitarian, fascist-style government, we need to put thousands upon thousands of completely innocent people upon the fake terrorist watch list, so we can bilk the government out of millions of dollars to watch them. We do this by making up completely fraudulent accusations and files against them, like they are terrorists, traitors, or child molesters. Then use corrupt officials, fusion centers, FBI, law enforcement, to spread fabricated rumors in their neighborhoods about them. telling neighbors that they can earn big bucks under the table for helping harass and assault them 24/7 with covert high-tech weapons and even kill them. Then we tell them, don't worry, it's a government program, so it's legal and you cannot get into any trouble because, after all, government is a god, not to be questioned by mere humans. We are asked sometimes if this no evidence, no due process, secret, false, accusation kill program is legal or constitutional. Well, it is if you're ignorant enough to help us trample everybody's constitutional rights. Then you help us destroy the Constitution, and we are free from worrying about everybody's rights, and whoever has the best weapons wins. So even though you have been called unremarkable your entire life, an army of depraved, greedy, easily led sociopaths like you can do the unimaginable. Like millions of termites, you can actually eat away at the very foundations of America by murdering the best and brightest who would challenge the takeover forever of America and with it the world. So come help us usher in a new world order of satanic pedophiles and degenerates and become one of us.
I think this is brilliant. I think literally the NSA's human, human resources team is like, oh my God, take notes, take notes, take notes.
Now, you guys can, as usual, you guys can just email, kams56@me.com. I will send you a copy. And I would suggest to you to send it to the new head of the Department of Homeland Security.
Excellent plan. Yes, maybe you sort of inundate her with that.
Absolutely. I also think
put it on Twitter, put it everywhere. I'll put it on my website.
In the US, you have these pin boards in supermarkets after the checkout where people can put up, their own little, in Europe, you always have a little board where you can put up, oh, my dog's lost, please, return Blackie, when you see him. So that sort of stuff. I think it should go up on all supermarkets and all the Walmarts, it should go up, just distribute it in your neighborhood. This is brilliant.
Bus stops?
Yes, I think actually flyering in the neighborhood is a brilliant idea. We need to do more of that. So many people have been sending me great flyers, which I'm kind of, remiss in posting on my website. I will get to it, I promise. But yeah, I think we should. I think we should actually start doing. There are no laws against flyering, are there? Anyone can go and hand flyers out. Your neighbors, stick them in mailboxes.
I think so, unless it says no flyers.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm thinking, I have to say this year I'm approaching Christmas in a rather wary fashion, because last Christmas I was tortured brutally by German intelligence when I visited my and it was literally last Christmas where they got out the big guns, and I think that's to do with their satanic, I don't know what, let's just be the biggest twats we can be on Christmas. And I think they're going to do the same thing this year with all the victims, and at the same time, so we have these tortured victims being highly motivated to really, stick it up to these guys, and we have all these families, also Christian families at home together. Isn't this the perfect time to actually distribute flyers, because people are at home and they've got time to look at it?
Oh, that's a great point, actually. Yeah, you can actually knock on people's doors and hand it to them.
Exactly, and say, here, guys, while you are celebrating Christmas, which, as far as I know, is still about, celebrating Christian values in most countries, there are Nazi psychopaths next door killing me, And
that notice of crimes against humanity on my website as well, that would be good to use. It's a reminder of the Rome Statute.
Yeah, and I think, what, the standard, and this is how you can also tell apart the the wheat from the chaff, because how to say, a rather careless, just pseudo-Christian family celebrating fake Christmas, celebrating Santa, which is an anagram for Satan, will just say, oh, why I'm getting this about people dying and being murdered in my neighborhood on Christmas when I just want to eat a lot and watch crap television all day long. And we'll just go like this. And a truly Christian family will think, what is going on? And isn't Christmas exactly the time when we should be thinking about the people who need our help? I think
especially from ourselves.
Yeah. Is it Christmas or is it a greed fest?
Exactly.
We have to ask ourselves this.
Also, also these people need our help, just our protection from ourselves, because if I hand it out to my neighbors, it's the neighbors who are quite involved in tracking and hitting with portable weapons and so forth, and
I think
permitting the DHS guys to come and park in driveways and hit from driveways.
Yeah.
Well, you can always put it in a lovely Christmas card.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah. No, it's true. It is true. And the other thing is also that I was thinking about this problem because I, like Ramola and like most victims, I've got a ring of Nazi neighbors who are earning a lot of money and killing me. But then I thought, hang on, because they do not have enough money to create like a flat plane of Nazi neighbors, because they don't know how to shoot that out of the first ring. And then it occurred to me what they're probably doing is that they are either putting rings around individual victims, or else they are putting concentric rings with the perps shooting a victim, and then the perps being shot at by other perps outside in other concentric little flats. Because that's what I would do. Because if I am paying a Nazi criminal to kill somebody, I must be a psychopath. So if I'm a psychopath, I would also think, hey, why don't I just have, instead of just, oh, sorry, I've got Freud, it's not Freud, I've got echo. I'm not sure. Somebody's microphone. But this is actually a serious point here. If we have, for example, if I was a psychopath, what I would do is I would put fraudulent life insurances on the life of the victim, right? Which is what we found. And this is what Karen has reported, that this is what's happening. But then wouldn't I be an even better psychopath with a better business plan if I put fraudulent life insurances on the victim as well as the perps? Because then whatever I pay them, I should get back 10 times through the fraudulent life insurances. So what I would do then is I would have a victim with a ring of perps and then concentric ring of perps around the perps. Because then you kill them all. And best of all, you don't have to pay those suckers, right, all the way till doomsday. And you also eliminate the witnesses to the crimes that you've paid for. Isn't that the best business plan?
Exactly. And I have had somebody bring up the fact that parents of children may basically get in a car accident, leaving children to be put into child services. Bingo. So isn't that lovely that a mother and father who think that it's all well and good to kill the next door neighbor so we can send Junior to college, maybe sending Junior into a pedophile ring, never to be heard from again. Exactly. Family values.
Yeah, because the people paying mom and dad already have a pedophile ring running, on the side. So exactly.
And this is another reason why people need to start paying attention to neurotechnology and covert neurotechnology use, which targeted individuals are reporting. And this is the other dirty secret. You brought it up earlier as well, Karen, saying that this the best and the brightest are being taken out in our societies, and we know that's the dirty little secret that mainstream media will not cover, will not touch, because what's happening is precisely that. Empowered individuals in our societies, people who speak out, community-minded individuals, civic-minded individuals, activists, writers, journalists, these are the ones being targeted. And anyone who's spoken out on for some reason or another in their field, in their worlds, in their little communities, and have established themselves as community leaders of whatever kind, because you can be a community leader for about anything, about trying to get clean water in your neighborhood, or just speaking out against the chemtrails that are raining aerosols down on us, or going to the city council and protesting about 5G being rolled out without community consent. Anything. You could be an activist or just somebody who's civic-minded, asking questions and speaking out, and that's when you get targeted. These are the people who are getting targeted. This is politically across the board, across the world. This is how the totalitarian one-world government is trying to suppress activism and protest and thinking, clear thinking, critical thinking, and clear seeing, by taking out the best and the brightest, and calling these people targeted individuals, and then creating Wikipedia entries and writing New York Times articles, putting down these targeted individuals as delusional and paranoid when they report that they are being stalked, surveilled, and hit with weaponry. So that it's all of a piece, you see. So, and it's this is why we need to be very aware. coming back to this, what you both are talking about, the concentric rings of targeting, and people being taken out and insurance companies benefiting. Well, think about neurotechnology and how neurotechnology is being reported by TIs today, by targeted individuals. Literally, neurotechnology is being used to pump frequencies into people's bodies and brains, whereby moods can be changed. Now, there is actually public domain information on this on the DARPA website, that the military is looking into mood changing, behavior modification, all with the most, beneficent of aims, no doubt, to help soldiers become super soldiers. Stop. So that their moods and their behavior and their neural networks can be modulated. But basically, what this neurotech has the power to do is to change people's behavior and modalities. This comes down to psychiatry. So literally, this neurotech can change somebody's behavior and make them extremely depressed, could make them bipolar, could make them schizoid, could make them delusional, could make them have hallucinations, auditory and visual. And then, of course, they're going to be diagnosed immediately by our prevailing authoritarian psychiatrists as indeed schizoid and delusional and bipolar. By that means, could wrongful diagnoses be leveled against parents, and could children be taken away from them? I think that's already happening. So you see, that's the kind of understanding that targeted individuals are bringing forward today, which is why they're being more and more suppressed and marginalized. So it behooves us, I think, those of us who can see clearly what is going on, who hear the reports, who understand what's going on, it behooves us to really pick up on our efforts here to alert the larger populace, that there's a kind of a feed cycle here, and it's literally like create disease so that they can have their aims and their criminal aims and their criminal trafficking aims supported in this way, on and on.
Well, these are also the people who have changed the, is it DSM, to say that, basically child molestation is a choice. It's just a preference. It's not a sickness. It's like, wait a minute, scientific facts don't change with whim. But apparently some of this is. But I would like to say, rather in jest, that a lawyer associated with Melanie's case brought to her attention, or her first lawyer's attention, that Melanie associated with the three of us, and that we were just very clearly all delusional. Okay, so I'm not going to say that I'm more or less sane than anybody else on this panel, okay? But let me give you some background. In over 20 years at NSA, I took psychological evaluations to get in and passed. I took psychological evaluations, routine psychological evaluations, every 5 years. Those were sent out for independent analysis, and I passed all of those. And I was challenged when I went to the Inspector General and asked them to investigate something that was not right. And I was told by a NSA security psychologist that if I didn't drop my Inspector General complaint, that she would go back over all those years of psychological evaluations and find a problem. So they were threatening to say that I was crazy and fire me. And I went to an independent psychologist. He evaluated me and tested me again and said, no, there's nothing wrong with her. And in fact, let me skip back. About 2 years before I was threatened, I had gone for a routine evaluation and had spoken to the head, the former head of NSA security psychologists, psychology. And he had given me a baseline and had said that I was one of the most strong people psychologically he'd ever met. Okay, so let's skip ahead. This other psychologist tells NSA there's nothing wrong with her, and they say, well, we're going to fire her for being crazy anyway. Because our psychologist, based on her 3 minutes with her, has decided that she's crazy and that people couldn't possibly be following her around who were wearing NSA security badges and driving NSA security cars. So that's just not possible. We don't even have to investigate. So I get fired. and I do sue them. And a few years later, 2015 or so, my lawyer subpoenas something that NSA doesn't like. They come down to Florida, where I am, flood the neighborhood with accusations that I'm crazy and dangerous. And things get rough, and I get physically attacked by one of the perps who apparently was upset that I was leaving Florida, going back to Maryland, and he may not get his kill bonus. Okay, so he physically attacks me. The sheriff's department arrests me for defending myself in the stand your ground state, and of course, they may not particularly want to mention the fact that his mother worked for the sheriff's department for 24 years. And they might just have been a little biased in writing down only his story and not a word of mine and not a word of the witness. They went with his story. So I get arrested and they say, well, you're crazy as a loon because this person couldn't possibly have weapons that don't exist, like directed energy weapons. So we're going to force you to talk to the jailhouse psychologist. So I talked to him and he says, there's nothing wrong with her. She's perfectly in touch with reality. Okay, so how many psychologists are those? How many up to then? And then I have a friend in Florida who I'd known at that point, maybe 4 years, who was a retired psychologist. So she writes up something saying there's nothing wrong with this woman. You know, in fact, I'm aware that something is going on that is hurting perhaps thousands of people around the country, around the world. So this woman is entirely in touch with reality, and she has pretty darn impressive credentials. So she writes this letter and offers it to the assistant district attorney in Florida, who doesn't want to read it, who doesn't want to talk to her, even though they had actually worked together on a case before and supposedly had mutual admiration. But this lady's analysis didn't fit the sheriff's department, the high school people, high school graduates at the sheriff's department. So I've got, and here's another kicker. My husband is a psychology major. Okay. And he wrote up saying something, you know what, if there was something wrong with my wife, I think I might have noticed. There's nothing. So I probably am the most vetted person psychologically on this panel. So, like I said, I'm not saying I'm any more or any less sane than any of the rest of you guys. But when you have about 5 psychologists who say there's nothing wrong with her, how does any lawyer with no psychology degree say, oh, all those people are delusional? So a woman who is from India, but has moved to the United States and lives in Massachusetts, a woman whose family has been in the United States for hundreds of years, and then another lady who is in Switzerland, and we never met before this. We've all fabricated the same delusion? I don't think so. The accusation that there are mass delusions having to do with this technology, when we're all very specific as to what we know, that is a mass delusion of our critics, because it is medically unsound. So I just wanted to throw that in.
That's really brilliant, and I'm glad you spelled all of that out, Karen. And, you know, as you say, I would say you are the most vetted person on this panel, at least between the 3 of us.
Top secret clearance, right? Can't be.
Yeah, they were giving them out on the corner at the time.
You think we might have passed? I kind of doubt it, but I doubt anybody after watching our panel would give us any sort of clearance anymore, because, you know, they'd really worry about their secrets being spilled, as well they should. Because we are in the business of spilling secrets. We should give ourselves clearance.
Yeah, top secret.
The spilling secrets levels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the truth. You know, the truth spillers. Yeah, at what level can you spill truth? But you're above top spilling.
Exactly, we are measuring our size with what big secrets are we spilling. You know, I think so far Karen is still, unbeatable. You know, I'm trying. I'm trying to spill the secrets of German and British intel. You know, sometimes I can't compete with the professionals. But also, I think as far as this kind of mass delusion is concerned, how can it be? And this is with what you can really kill all these arguments for good, is it is statistically impossible to either go mad by a chemical imbalance in your head, or just be, confused in such a way that you can perfectly mimic your statements about a classified technology that you don't even know exists. So when people first start complaining about microwave weapons and they describe their symptoms that they have as a result of being shot at or somehow manipulated with electromagnetic weapons, if it was just them, thinking, oh, they're just going a bit funny, no one would actually say the specific things that are the telltale signs of electromagnetic weapons. What I typically hear the victims describe first is things like, oh, look, I've got all these photographs of burns on my hands that I don't know where they're coming from. And the burns don't look like burns. They look like burns with bruises. That's really unusual. Or they just say, I've got all these bruises and some are really small, almost like a finger, and I've got these weird pains changing size. I mean, when I went to my neurologist and I wanted her to write down that she has never heard these symptoms, she didn't believe me because the symptoms didn't match anything that she knew about, and that's exactly the clincher. So if people suddenly all together, without knowing each other prior or without having, consulted, when they first start complaining to their family and friends and their partners about what they're experiencing, and it happens to match a multi-billion-dollar industry that seems to be mostly classified, that really matches them being victims and not them just all spontaneously having chemical imbalances in their head, that makes their perceptions go a bit funny.
Yes, and that's actually the prevailing mythos that's being rolled out in all of these articles that are coming out of mainstream media. It's in Wikipedia. Mass delusion. Okay, so apparently there's a group of people who've only met each other on the internet, and they're now in an echo chamber of their own creation. They're all uniformly paranoid and delusional, and they've sparked off this delusion off each other, because you see, delusions are infectious, and else via Wi-Fi
and toilet seats.
Toilet seats. And now you've got masses of delusional people all over the world coagulating, thinking they are being followed by government agents, thinking they're being surveilled, thinking that their voices and their conversations are being tapped and audio bugged and video bugged.
At a time when the surveillance money is exploding. But that's only a coincidence.
Pure coincidence, nothing to do with the fact that trillions of dollars are being poured into the NSA and the FBI and so on and so forth, and DHS. Whereas you now have these people, hundreds of them, coming out of the woodwork, saying they're being stalked multiply, saying they are experiencing COINTELPRO, flashing and brighting and all sorts of hazardous driving on the roadways. And saying also that when they go to doctors and psychiatrists say they're delusional because they're reporting stalking. When somebody reports stalking, they're considered delusional. When somebody reports color coding around them or weird other psyops, they're seen as delusional. So you see, we just happen to have, coincidentally, a vast number of delusional people reporting stalking, surveillance, assault with electromagnetic weapons, and neurotech weaponry in their heads as well. They are reporting auditory and visual hallucinations. They're reporting voices. They're reporting hearing people talk in their heads, and abusive people, abusive voices. So we have, in other words, this mass number of people who clearly are engaging in mass delusion, paranoia. They are actually schizoid and schizophrenic. They are mentally ill. They haven't gotten treatment. They are just not being funneled into the right mental health department. We are spending trillions of dollars on surveillance, but this is a mental health issue. We need to spend more money on mental health in our communities now. We need to really put these people down. There's been an explosion. So you see the idiocy of that, the lunacy of that, and the fact that these guys who are creating these stories, because that's what they are. These are cover stories. And who is good at creating cover stories in our midst? Think about it. It's those dark secret factions. It's the CIA, Operation Mockingbird, creating cover stories. So these people who are creating cover stories are doing a deadly job keeping mainstream media utterly in the dark, keeping the stray journalist who still has a speck of integrity left in his soul completely in the dark, so that he's going to report the same old story over and over again. These are people meeting each other on the internet, exchanging stories, exchanging symptoms, not really knowing what's happening to them. Forget the fact that we have trillions of dollars also being put into the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate and into the RFID chip industry, and into medical microchip and nanotech. Forget all those billions of dollars. Forget the fact that, these weapons have been developed. Forget the fact that what's-his-name came out and said openly, we have to test weapons on Americans.
Air
Was
Force
the
General.
Secretary of the Air Force? Air Force
Yeah.
General.
There's an Air Force General in the Houston Chronicle saying, oh, we need to test this on American citizens. And like I said, that's
Right.
a cover story because they know that it's coming out. And what they want to do is they want to actually go to a group of people and say, we're going to test these non-lethal weapons on you. And they're going to test them at a very, very low strength. And the people will say, oh, it felt tingly and yucky. So yes, I would run away. And then they will say, see, those people, there are no lasting damage. All these other people claiming to have gone blind or gotten leukemia, they're all just lying. They're all just lying. They have no better thing to do than just lie about their health.
And they say these are reversible effects. These non-lethal weapons have reversible effects. When in actuality, these people are being hit. People who are being tested on, being used. And I can openly say that because, the documentation is there and we have been exploring it and we will continue to explore it and write about it and put it out there. People are being used as test subjects by the military, the US Navy, the US Air Force, and by other militaries around the world. It's not just America, it's Europe, it's Australia, it's New Zealand. And it's all ultimately under the aegis of that one intelligence agency, apparently the one military agency as well, because the militaries appear to be working. It's either an arms race or they're working together.
And how is it they're protecting us by murdering us? If I had a child I wanted to protect, would I nail it in a box so that nobody could get to it and let it die? That's not protecting. And that's their whole vision of we're going to kill our citizens to protect them. That doesn't make any sense at all. That's like a parent turning into a cannibal. It just is obscene. And the people teaching this to the people who go into the military, they're teaching, again, we're looking at a caste system. You're military, you're over everybody. In Japan, the samurais could walk up to a peasant and chop him or her up at their own whim, and there was nothing to be done about it because the peasant was the peasant. They didn't count.
You see, that's what
we're walking into.
That is exactly what's going on right now,
Yes.
except I guess the samurai would have a sword, right? It was very physical. It was very visible. Right now, what we have are these weapons that are the dream of these agencies. They are stealth weapons by nature. They're radiation weapons. The arc of the projectile cannot be seen. Yeah, it's the wet dream of cowards, exactly.
Yeah,
and that's what they're engaging in.
I think also in the case of the samurai, it's true that the samurai could go and chop up a peasant. However, if one samurai went and chopped up a peasant, then 20 farmers would hit him over the head with a stone and then, put his body away under the ground and say, did we see that samurai? No. One of our friends unfortunately died in a riding accident, but we've not seen a samurai. No idea where he went.
But today what's happening is because of the stealth weaponry, you're right, those 20 farmers can't really come out anymore. They don't even know about it. And what do they, when they look at the newspaper and when they look online, what do they see? They see the CIA cover story that says the people reporting this weaponry are delusional. Pay no attention to them. This is in Wikipedia. Yesterday, I had the privilege of reading the electronic harassment entry in Wikipedia, thanks to Dr. Ed Spencer. He sent it around, So he said, basically the information is out there, but it's hidden under psychiatry, which is kind of, a kind way of putting it, because if you actually read the entry, it's all about how these people, these quote-unquote targeted individuals are coming out of the woodwork, reporting all sorts of things, and they're clearly delusional, and they don't know it. And, let's bring out our tried and true through Lorraine Sheridan and her study on gang stalking, and let's bring out the the New York Times article, United States of Paranoia. You know, they claim they're being stalked, or whatever the title of that piece is. And let's bring out our own cover stories and use them to bolster our prevailing larger picture cover story, that these people are delusional and no one should pay any mind to them because there is no such thing as surveillance abuse. Nobody's being tortured. No weapons are being used. Nothing to see here. Go off and find a mental asylum to put these people in.
And no police or sheriff's department or fusion center ride-along programs where they induct civilians into their vigilante programs, such as InfraGuard. And what do those people do? Do they not, I don't know, follow around, stalk, harass suspected terrorists? And did not President Obama lower the threshold of putting somebody on the terrorist watch list to absolutely nothing in 2013? It's not even probable cause. It's wink, wink, nod, nod. Put Susie on the list. That's the criteria.
And hide the list in the trunk.
And ladies,
yes, of the car.
I just had an idea. I'm sorry. My brain started working when I heard this Wikipedia article about electronic harassment. And I was thinking, how can we system judo, so that we put one in for them? And here's an idea. What do you think? How about we write a Wikipedia article? Because they have written a Wikipedia article about electronic harassment, we write the Wikipedia article about microwave mutilation. And then we say, people who come to you and report microwave mutilation are the victims of the intelligence agencies and miscellaneous, DOD and CIA, and you can't even list them, there are so many, illegal programs, and typically they will refer to directed energy weapons, pulsed energy projectiles, and synthetic telepathy, and RFID chips, which you can find all in the documentation and in the military declassified documents. However, those people who come to you and complain about electronic harassment, which we all know doesn't really exist and doesn't even figure in the military literature, are probably agents and totally delusional and just want to make a quick buck. How about that?
That's great, Katherine. The only problem is the way Wikipedia is run, anybody can go in and edit, right? So with all of these subjects, definitely with this article on electronic harassment, and also I think on the article on targeted individuals, when people have gone in and tried to edit, their edits have been taken out. So in other words, Wikipedia is nothing but another Mockingbird show. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. They are not going to let the truth come out in Wikipedia. They are trying very hard to maintain their delusional reality, their suppressive, fascist, totalitarian reality of suppressing the voices of those who are targeted by keeping them out of Wikipedia. So anybody who's targeted, who tries to go into Wikipedia and tries to edit, is literally being emasculated, cannot put the truth out there. You cannot put the truth out there in Wikipedia. That's the problem. That's the prevailing problem. Many people have tried to address this by saying, we need to start a new wiki of our own. And I think, Omni started one. I think he started a technology wiki, and we should promote that quite a bit. And we can perhaps put the microwave mutilation article there on Omni's new technology wiki, because it looks completely, he's done a fabulous job. It looks so much like Wikipedia, and so that's what we could do.
I think that's a brilliant idea. So let's put it on alternative sites. But also, I also have this kind of approach that when things are really sabotaged, people, I mean intelligence agencies, are trying to tell us, keep away from here, this is also sabotage, you can't get on Twitter, you can't get on Facebook, just keep away, go elsewhere, and we keep Twitter. And my approach is, no, if it's sabotage, that's exactly where we should be, because that's where we can collect evidence. So if Wikipedia we know it's sabotaged and they're going to rewrite the articles, fantastic, because we know where to look. So how about victims gang together and they agree with several victims, several witnesses, and they say the following. One of them is going to write the article about microwave mutilation and then tweet the link to all the other victims and the general public that the article is finished. And then everybody prints it off, gets a physical copy and gets a PDF for court use and puts it into the court bundle. And then we watch when this article will get rewritten. And then when we go to court, we will request the IP address of the person who has actually written the article. And we check if it was somebody who got paid by the CIA or by German intelligence, or if they maybe, I don't know, were writing it from a server associated with a government computer or something like that, you know. And we just map it out and we find out who exactly are those people who are making these edits.
That's a great way of doing it. I have another suggestion. You know, just take that article and rip it to shreds, and I'll be happy to do that shortly. So as soon as I get some time, it's on my list of things to do. But, you know, now I'm beginning to wake up to, you know, the crap that's actually out there and recognizing that somebody needs to actually say this is absolute crap, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to do it. And I think I should, you know, because
Yeah,
I'm publishing as a journalist now. And I think I need to point out that there's all sorts of crap that's being published, which any journalist in his right mind or her right mind needs to look out and say, this is absolute BS. What is really happening is what those who are being assaulted are reporting. And we need to honor the reports of victims who are coming forward and speaking about what's happening. Otherwise, we're going to be just like the guys who walked past Auschwitz and let those guys suffer inside those concentration camps. We're going to be just like the guys who, you know, betrayed Anne Frank and her family, or, you know, didn't know about them perhaps. But every time that we heard news about them, we just didn't pass the news on to other people. We didn't do anything about it. I think in this country, for instance, in the US, the news about the Holocaust and about what was going on in those concentration camps kind of began to trickle out only much later, did it not, Karen? And then it was slowly people began to be mobilized and began to be aware that some horrific atrocities had gone down there. But when the news first came out, it didn't reach everybody.
No, and frankly,
began to find people.
Yes, frankly, there was denial, because there were reports coming from people coming from Europe that Germany was arresting its own people, putting them in concentration camps, and perhaps even killing them. And of course, America, you know, the vast majority of Americans said, oh, preposterous. No country would do that to its own people. Well, you know, basically Pearl Harbor got us into the war. And when the American soldiers got there and saw the concentration camps, took pictures, Americans were horrified. You know, I mean, they knew that we were fighting because we'd been attacked, but they weren't quite so sure about all these stories that they found utterly preposterous. And then part of the reason to take the pictures was to convince the American public, yes, it was going on, not only to convince them, but of course for historical purposes. But a lot of the Americans still knew we were at war, but they didn't quite believe that a country could do to their own people what the Germans did, you know. And the Germans convinced themselves that a set of people within were somehow not human. And that's what we're looking at with ourselves now. We're in a caste system. We are not quite human. We're not quite, you know, what the rest of these people are. And frankly, in my opinion, thank God, because the rest of these people are sociopaths, you know. So, you know, we're being picked out for having integrity and having compassion and being human. But
well, it has to do with fascism as well. It has to do with totalitarian oppression. You know, it has to do with the Nazis. It has to do with a group of people,
the same idea,
who decided to hold power over another group of people, and through that means of holding power, they created scapegoats.
Yes,
they threw them into concentration camps in those days, and over here now they don't need to, because they can make your home an electronic concentration camp, and they can fry you in your bed. Well, with a microwave weapon.
Yes, and they're telling all these people in the United States, you're under threat, you're under danger. Any moment your car could blow up. You could be hit by a train. You could be, you know, anything can happen. And these people are feeling frustrated. So now they're saying, oh, you know what? You can go harm this person because we found a terrorist. It's Susie over here who's a first grade teacher. She's really a terrorist. And how is it these idiots don't have the brains to go, wait a minute, the first grade teacher's a terrorist? You know? Her family's been here for 100 years. How is she a terrorist? You know, but they're so desperate.
They're desperate, and you know, people just quail. This is the other thing: the issue of the badge, right? The syndrome of the badge. I'm CIA. I'm DHS. I'm the local police. Susie's a terrorist. Let me sit on your couch and use my cell phone so she can be hit. So we're tracking her. We're just that's all we're doing. We're just tracking her. but we need to track her constantly because she's a terrorist. And she's in a program where we need to keep an eye on her. This is our job now. We have to track Susie because she's a terrorist. A first grade teacher, she did art all the time, and she took the little children to the park all the time. She's a terrorist. I'm sorry, but this is the nature of the country now. We are in the home guard. By the way, I heard somebody at the library say, I'm so busy these days with home guard. Is this what DHS is running?
Yeah, they keep spelling guard wrong, though it's TARD.
Yeah, they are the home guards, most definitely.
So. Doesn't it sound like the DHS desperately trying to glorify housewives who really don't have a clue what they're doing? Instead of guarding a home like in the olden days, taking care of the children, you will be sitting there with a mobile phone, frying somebody, thinking you're part of the home guard now.
It's the homeland. We're in the home guard. And by the way, it's not just housewives. It's men, women, children. It's even children. They've got children recruited.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and they're doing this. They're running this as quote unquote kosher programs, through these, what are they? There are so many. If you look at the police and, those associations associated with the police, you've got the COPS program, the Community Policing System program, or whatever that is, the COPS, whatever it stands for. Then you've got the Citizen Watch, the Neighborhood Watch, the USA Watch, the Big Brother Watch programs through DHS, right? Yeah. And then through the FBI, you've got InfraGard. So
and I have a new entry. I have a new entry for you. Just put them all under neighborhood Nazis.
Yes.
Brilliant.
I like it.
Love it. Neighborhood Nazis. That's the title of the next flyer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's excellent.
For all neighborhood Nazis.
Yeah. And in fact, over Christmas, I wanted to write that letter, which I think we should write, a letter to all the neighbors to inform all these concentric rings, also the people who are not part of this, because I feel that the perps need to be put on notice that we know what they're doing and who they are. And the people who are just normal neighbors, maybe one ring outside of these perps, they also need to know that when the perps are shooting at a house wall, 50% of the radiation gets reflected back. So they are radiating themselves and all the other neighbors sideways. So, 50% radiation going through, 50% reflecting. Your next door neighbor has as much a claim if he gets cancer if you inside the house.
And in fact, I think the thing that needs to be stressed to these neighbors who are permitting these guys to sit in their cars on the street or to occupy houses in neighborhoods and shoot from there, the thing that needs to be stressed is this is not just cell phone tracking.
Yeah.
This is not just using Wi-Fi just like a cell phone works. It's not, at that level of wattage or whatever. What's really happening is pulse shots are being shot through walls at us. They're being shot through walls at people who are reporting EMF weapon assault. They're being shot. This is exactly the same as having a gun. The discharge is radiation, and it is pulsed radiation. And that's why it has that effect that you're talking about, and it's so detrimental. And it's going to harm the health of everybody who's in the line of fire, everybody whose houses those shots pass through.
Yeah, and also my point is that it's not just the line of fire, because I think that's what the perps are seeing, because there's a reflections of
and the reflection, yeah.
You have also a very wide angle where you just hit people, at the reflective angle. So if you're hitting a house wall straight, the reflection hits you. If you hit it slightly at an angle, it's going to hit the neighbor. If you hit it at the wider angle, it's going to hit several neighbors down, And
so for every pulse shot coming your way, there's going to be a reflection that's going to go off in another angle, and it's most definitely going to hit people who are living in the adjacent houses.
Absolutely. And that's the point. And I think this is what a lot of perps are not seeing. They're not seeing that they are in the program as well, because the people who put them in are organized criminals. And the neighbors who are innocent, I also think we have, I certainly as a physicist, I do have a responsibility towards my neighbors who are not physicists to explain to them that this is happening to me, and that through the physical effect of reflection, they are going to be hit as well. So we both have a claim here.
And this is why people need to wake up. So, before you become a neighborhood Nazi, in other words, before you acquiesce and simply fall along with these people who are flashing badges and telling you that somebody's a terrorist who needs to be watched, needs to be surveilled, and needs to be hit. And before you let people sit in your, front rooms or in your driveways and hit these unhappy scapegoats, these targets, before you do that, recognize that what you're opening yourself for is literally for the entire neighborhood to be flooded with pulsed microwave radiation on a 24/7 basis, because this poor scapegoat is being hit on a 24/7 basis. He or she is not going to die of cancer alone. You are. You are opening up the entire bloody neighborhood to cancer. Pardon the language.
And especially your children, because their DNA is very susceptible. And I just had a conversation with a nearby neighbor, and he popped his head over the fence and said something very innocuous. And we got into a conversation yesterday, and I found out he was retired military intelligence. And so I kind of told him my story in a shortened version, if you can believe it exists in a shortened version. But his eyes popped wide open, and I told him about NSA saying, "Oh, you basically have to be fired because you're crazy." And he said, "You don't sound crazy." I said, "Well, thank you." And so I told him the same thing that's what you're talking about. I said, "This is a program." I said, "You've heard of these weapons?" He said, "Yes, I have. I was military intelligence." I said, "Okay, so you know that they're also assassination weapons as well as weapons of war." I said, "When they're in a mobile form, and I said, my home is getting hit from 3 directions because they do triangulate." And he said, "Yes, they do." And he said, and then I said, "And guess who's living behind me?" And he said, "I am." I said, "Yes, so you're getting it too." So now he's somebody I've had questions about. So after this lovely conversation, and he said, "Well, my family's going to be praying for you." And I said, "Well, that's wonderful."
You should have said, "Karen, and my family's going to be praying for you, my friend."
Yeah, really.
But after we had this nice conversation, he left the house and went somewhere. Within 15, 20 minutes or so, there was a fire truck and an ambulance that raced off into a direction where I believe the neighborhood is being directed by someone on Latchkey Way. I just haven't located the house yet. And every time I seem to communicate something that upsets them, the local fire department dispatches a ambulance and a fire truck to go from their sirens from the fire department to this area where it seems to have some leadership there. And they seem to be the ones doling out some of these devices every so often when they run out of batteries or they decide to switch them up, So it seems to always be coming from Latchkey Way. And like I said, anytime too that I say something that maybe upsets them, then we have this ambulance rushing there. So I found it very interesting that in telling this military intelligence guy, who would, of course, obey anything Department of Homeland Security told him to do because he is ex-military and he just follows orders. But once I got him engaged in thinking, then we had this occurrence yet again. Are they connected? Are they coincidence? But yet again, something upsetting was said that was the truth as opposed to the lie. And then you had this immediate reaction from the fire department. Now, I'd seen that in Florida as well. And that was to get the people who needed to be from place A to place B to handle the crisis of truth leaking into their program. So that's just an observation. Just an observation. Could be maybe just wild coincidence.
This is hilarious. Oh my goodness. As I was listening to the story, I was like, my eyes were popping. It's like you've got military intel next door. And then, Karen, you must have caused the biggest situation ever. There must have been frenzied phone calls. Like, we have got a situation. She's talking to a military intel guy. She's getting him into things. What things? Pedophilia? A hit job? No, thinking. Oh my God, we've got military
Can't have that.
Thinking. This is fantastic.
Can't do that if he doesn't have the need to know, right? He's got to be read into things.
I will tell you that last night I was hit particularly hard.
Good God.
Unusually hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
I
were
think
not pleased.
was this a recent conversation then, Karen?
Yesterday.
Oh, okay. Wow, very recent.
Oh my goodness,
The
that
news is spreading. Yes, the news is
news
spreading.
is
The
spreading, and
truth
thank
is spreading.
goodness.
The reality is spreading.
And also the news that you've got military intel living next to you is spreading, because yeah, aren't they trained in this, and don't they know about this?
He knew about the weapons, and I'm kind of hoping he tells his buddies.
Yeah. And maybe you
Because
can also see my diagram where I explain how even if he's not the moron hitting you, and hitting a wall that points at him, if somebody else is hitting a wall at an angle, it will still give him prostate cancer, with any chance.
I made sure to emphasize things like that. I said,
Yeah.
these things, directed energy weapons, aren't real directed. And he goes, no, they're not. And he said, and then I said, and even when you triangulate and you hit one piece of property from 3 different directions, it's not like the directed energy weapons go to the property line and say, oh, we have to stop here. I said, so you're getting it. This other guy next to me is getting it. Basically, the whole neighborhood is getting it. I may die of cancer in a year, and your child may die of it in 3 years.
Exactly. And if this guy has a granddaughter who's visiting him, given that he's, sounds like he's retired, he might have a grandson, but even worse if he's got a granddaughter. If she just spends one day playing in the garden and these guys are shooting at you, as Dr. Berry Try explained, I think in a woman, the egg cells are formed at birth. So any damage to DNA in the egg cells of a young girl or even a baby, a female baby, will cause permanent damage to the mitochondrial DNA and therefore to the entire line. And I just happen to know that specifically military intel just keeps going on about bloodlines so very much, and about intermarrying bloodlines, amongst military intel stuff that seems to be going on. And it seems like, if he's got a granddaughter, or one of the other, people have a granddaughter just playing in the area, then yeah, they would have damaged their bloodline pretty much for good with a very high certainty. Also because children have got less biomass, to protect them and their, female ovaries from directed energy weapons used by maybe their grandfather or his mates. Yeah. And even better still, if his granddaughter goes to play in any area, given that we know how prevalent directed energy weapons are and how they're used on Americans, his granddaughter could be hit anywhere. And then granddad, knowing about directed energy weapons and not having done anything about it, well, he would be kind of guilty.
And what you bring up also is the issue of these eugenicist genocidal programs, because literally people are being singled out, selected, and their DNA is being affected in this fashion. Their reproductive fertility is being affected there, and their lines are being truncated. People who are targeted report uniformly being unable to have children, or they just do not have children because they're being hit so badly. They don't want any children that they have to be hit so badly. And of course, there are people with children, young mothers, young fathers who are being hit. They already have children, and their children are being hit as well.
And those victims, Ramola, who manage to have children, and their babies are being taken away by hospital arrests.
Yes, comes back to psychiatrists, and comes back to who is behind psychiatrists, who gives psychiatry their power, gives psychiatrists their power. Is it not intelligence? Is it not the intelligence agencies, the network of intelligence? Because I think when you probe the story of Melanie's baby, I think you unfortunately come right up against Belgian intelligence. And I found yesterday when I was putting the finishing touches to my article, which I've spent a little while writing, and I've ultimately published only 1/2 of what I have because it's too much. I think I can only publish this in little chunks. But there was no way I could write that article without asking the question, with all of the things that these psychiatrists have done to Melanie, and even, messing up the so-called independent psychiatric assessment, where she was dragged off to Brugman in the middle of the night and subjected to the special interrogation. And then the guy who interrogated her actually said to her, "Oh, you seem fine. I think I need to send you back to the maternity ward, because there's no delusion here. You actually did have an implant and it was removed. And I'm looking at the report right now and I can see that you are not delusional, that you are telling the truth. And the report confirms that you are telling the truth. Therefore, there's no issue here. You are not mentally ill. We're sending you back to the maternity ward." Then he gets a phone call and he comes back and he says to her, "I'm sorry, the decision has already been made. You are going to psychiatry."
And the
What does
phone
that
call.
mean? I mean,
Yeah.
made by who? Made from on high? The king? And who exactly is the king? Well, actually, Belgium does have a king.
Yeah, it does have a king who Alfred Weber publicly said seems to be a pedophile. But that aside, the other thing is also the phone call came at 1 a.m. So who is up at 1 a.m.? That's not the Belgian king. So he's out. It wasn't the Belgian king making this phone call. So who made that phone call at 1 a.m.? But also, I mean, it's absolutely impossible to come to a conclusion that Belgian intelligence is not involved, given that Melanie had military technology implanted in her throat in her own flat. So doctors,
which has been as a sign of covert intelligence activity. And there is so much more over there because, her human rights organization was working with other victims of covert implantation and was helping them to build a court case against the intelligence agencies, because who else is doing this implanting? If you are implanted covertly and there is a real criminal in the neighborhood who's doing this, just a random criminal, and you go to the local police and you say, "Look, I've found this stuff in my body. I'm clearly being implanted by criminals. Help me." You would think in a normal society that the police would help. But we're currently living in societies where the police, as soon as you say the word implant, they're not going to say, "Oh, let me see the evidence." They're going to call up their, community mental health care unit and send you to the psychiatric ward. So this connection between police, psychiatry, and behind it, intelligence has already been very firmly established. This is the way the intelligence agencies are covering up their crimes: the crime of implantation and non-consensual experimentation, non-consensual behavior modification through this implant system, sending frequencies to implants, etc. This entire crime by the intelligence agencies is being hidden by this elaborate scenario where you have several people lying. You have law enforcement lying, you have psychiatrists lying. The psychiatrists are there to lie. The DSM is there to lie. And that, by the way, is what Dr. Rani Kilder has said in some of her articles. She said that the entire DSM, with its false disorders and its suggestion that people reporting this, that, and the other, whether it's stalking or surveillance or the feeling of being implanted, that they be seen as delusional. The entire DSM has been set up as a cover to shroud the crimes of the intelligence agencies.
I think that's true, and I also suspect that DSM stands for Duping Stupid Morons. but ladies, when we talk about big conspiracies and also cartels and how and why would people conspire? That's always like, but why would the entire world conspire to do X? That's usually the comeback. And for that, I would like to share my screen and show you a couple of things, because a very long while back, just very briefly, I want to point you to two things. Because some while back, I was trying to give this, do you remember my slideshow that I made pointing people to satanic symbolism, what satanic symbolism there is, that these are typical mafia or cartel symbols. And then at the very end, I was going on about, let me skip forward, about all the different flags having satanic pentagrams, right? Do you remember that? So in this talk, all these different countries that have literally declared their satanic allegiance, if I go back to the beginning, I would like to remind you, I would like to remind you of the typical cartel signaling. And I would like to remind you of this checkered pattern, the black and white, the good versus evil, the controlling the two sides, and the fact that this looks like a chessboard, and the fact that the Freemasons always want to control the world like chess. Now, with this checkered pattern, I would like to point you to, oh, sorry, I stopped sharing my screen. I would like to point you to one thing, which is if you are living in the UK, and if you don't, if you live in the US, you can do something similar. But if you live in the UK, you will see a police cap looking like this, having a big checkered pattern. Why would that be? Why would that be? And then also, you know, the normal bobbies on the street, on the beat, don't have that. They have, oh, can I find the bigger one? This one. They have this, so no checkered pattern here. But what you have is a big 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pointed star, a so-called octagon. And then you can type in octagon, and Sean Ross, spelled H-R-O-S-S, Sean Ross, a South African historian living in Switzerland, who has reported about the big cartel, mafia cartel, organizing their enforcement arm into the so-called octagon pattern. They are the octagon part of the cartel, the enforcement arm. So you've got the octagon symbol, then the crown, which I remind you does not stand for the royal family, but for the Crown Corporation, owned by the Vatican. And then if these little bobbies climb the ranks and they become an inspector, they will have a cap like that. And by that time, they would not only be part of the octagon, they would also be part of the Freemasons. It's literally, you know, in our face. So if we're looking for a big conspiracy whereby, I don't know, the mafia could be a front for, you know, sorry, the Freemasons could be a front for the mafia, and all the, you know, higher up police officers in the UK somehow having a badge and, you know, some symbols related to Freemasonry, could we possibly conclude that there might be a conspiracy amongst pretty much all police who are better clued in, and certainly behind the high level police, to do the bidding of the Freemasons and therefore the mafia?
And in fact, that, Katherine, is the subject of the conversation that I had recently with Jeff Godwin. And he spoke precisely about this, the ribbon on the police hats, you know, as being a Masonic sign. And we started by, you know, looking at this whole picture of the Masons in the police, and to what extent have they infiltrated the police? Because I'm very interested in finding out. And I'm going to continue talking about this and exploring this, because I think it's important for all of us to know. Because really what it points to is the fact that, you know, the people whom we have thought good law enforcement working on our side are really not. Apparently, the answer that Jeff gives me, you know, and remember, he's very aware of what's happening in the UK, but also elsewhere, is that he basically said the police are a Masonic cult. In other words, there are large numbers of Masonic infiltrators in the police. And the people in the police who are not Masonic or not intrinsically involved as much in Masonic activities are the ones who don't have as much power. So essentially, the police is functioning as an arm of the Masonics, you know, and also the Freemasons. And you see, Freemasons now, with his awareness of the occult and his background, you know, there, because if you saw his first conversation with me, he talks about how he explored all of that quite a bit in his younger years, and he was a part of a satanic cult, and he's now pulled out of it. But of course, now with that information, with that experience, he's got a lot of inside awareness and inside information about how they work. One of the things he said was the Freemasons, Lucifer is their god. So those Freemasons who don't know that, and who, by the way, some of whom can be found on YouTube, you can check out some of the videos out there where Freemasons will talk about how we're not so secret, we're not a secret society, and they're kind of trying to set people straight about who they are and where they came from, their roots. They're really into helping people, and they're into bringing society benefits, etc. Those Freemasons, he says, maybe do not know that Luciferianism lies behind Freemasonry at the topmost levels.
And I also think that when we look at Freemasonry, we have to go back and actually understand where the hell it comes from. So, you know, and what exactly it stands for at the top, you know, who invented it and where does it come from? Because also Freemasonry seems to be a parallel system of organizing society, certainly the men, you know, there's something for the women called Eastern Star, whatever it's called, but, you know, especially the men using basically their group instinct, you know, their gang instinct to just follow a leader and therefore organize the entirety of society. But what the Freemasons and the Illuminati and this entire mafia cartel has actually is also a parallel system of law that most people don't know. So when a Freemason has a problem with a normal person, the Freemason wins in a Masonic court. But what happens when a Freemason goes up against a Freemason? You have to find a way to, you know, pronounce judgment. But you can't go into an open court because maybe they want to have an argument about, oh, well, you know how we robbed all those normal people who are not Freemasons, and now we're really bothered about how to split up the loot. Well, you can't discuss that in a normal court. So they started having their own courts. So actually, Freemasonry is a parallel society. So when Katherine Austin Fitts is wondering where the over 40 trillions went, and people are saying, oh, we could be funding a parallel society on Mars. Yeah, we could be, but we could also be funding this parallel society here on Earth that we just don't know exists, but it's actually stonkingly rich through that. And I just would like to point to two things. Number one, a long while ago, I mentioned this German book. I'm sorry, it's in German. However, this is the diaries of the Duke of Croix in 1718 to 1784. So I want to go back to the 18th century. And in this book, the bookmark dropped out, so I don't know which page it is, but there's an entire chapter where this guy makes a diary. This is his diary entry, guys. So this guy made a diary entry about how he went and he attended some sort of initiation thingy, ritual thing, at the Masonic Lodge. And he was so well chuffed with himself because he met, all these other princes and royalty, and it was also secret and also special. And his entire diary entry is in code, in Masonic crappy code. But anyway, the one thing that transpires is that he's so jolly pleased with himself. And when I first introduced this, I said, at no point did he think, hang on, I'm a duke, above me is the king. What could there possibly be so secret that I don't know about, that all these other people know about that are not really dukes? Could it possibly be that the really cunning businessman is about to, you know, have the better of me? You know, could it be that we're being pulled into something whereby somebody's trying to steal our wealth? Okay, so I mentioned that, right? But then I want to mention another thing, because this diary goes up to 1784. And 5 years later, 1789, this guy was either dead by then or didn't have time to write diaries. That was the French Revolution, right? And the French Revolution is portrayed to be this great liberation, and you know, this total tyrant, the French king. He got his head chopped off, and his missus and his other missus got their head chopped off, and basically everybody had got their head chopped off in a big frenzy that very much reminds me of the big Jew genocide we have now. Somehow there's less blood, but somehow almost as many, if not more, dead bodies. Okay, so at some point I thought, let's just go back to the French Revolution and check out what exactly happened, because suddenly something empowered all these really poor people who didn't have fancy weapons to build really fancy guillotines and start chopping aristocrats' heads off. So where exactly did it come from? And because I didn't really pay attention in history, and I was really crap as a student in history, I had to get a shortcut. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to read all these history books. Let's just cut to the chase of it. What was the end result? And the end result was that we had the declarations of, I think, what's it called? It's called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. This was in 1789 by the National Assembly, and it was meant to be this total breakthrough in the natural rights of man and so on. And I would like to share my screen and show you what exactly that document was. Because if you go to Wikipedia, to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, right, you can read about it. It came out August 1789. And then this here is the fundamental document of the French Revolution and in the history of human rights. Let's just click on it. And if you see this image, right, what do you see? You see the rights, okay, but then you have a snake eating its own tail, and then you have this angel on the right-hand side, and back in the day, most people were right-handed, so they would look to the right first. So this angel seems to be very important, and she's pointing down to the rights of men, and then she's pointing up at the all-seeing eye. And she seems to kind of say, you know, guys, this stuff down there, it's coming from there. The all-seeing eye is still at the top. And more than that, you know, we also have this wreath thing. We've got the snake eating its own tail. And then we have the cap that I think was used by I forgot the technical French name for it, but by the revolutionaries. And that cap seems to be on a spear. And it's almost like the head of the revolutionaries got spared. So that much about the French Revolution. And as I said in my talk a while back, the all-seeing eye, as we know, is the symbol of the mafia. Always has been. And people say to me, oh yeah, but I see this in all these Christian churches all around the world. And I say, exactly. The Vatican is so old. If it didn't start off to be the mafia, it got infiltrated by the mafia, right? Over these centuries. So what you have is you have the mafia having infiltrated churches, having put the mafia, all-seeing eye, we're all watching you. We are all watching you. Absolutely everyone saying, oh, what we mean is God's watching you, right? It's God. It's God, really. You know, forget about the big Vatican spy networks and so on. Forget about us killing a bunch of, you know, miscellaneous popes even, and certainly kings and so on. Forget about that. And also, please forget about the fact that the French Revolution was the biggest asset stripping of a king in history, in like that type of modern history. It was pretty big. You know, aristocrats had to like flee to other countries and to Britain and all that sort of stuff. So it was pretty big. And at the end of the day, who won? Like the simple person in Paris living in some, you know, back end that looks like almost like as bad as London today. No, they didn't win. It was the mafia. You know, and the question is, where did all the wealth of the French king go? You know, who benefited at the time? And then if the French Revolution was really bloody and they got the French population to kill another part of the French population, most of the time on actual total trumped up charges, because the French Revolution didn't just kill aristocrats, it also killed a lot of normal people, you know, in the French streets. So if that's strikingly like what's happening with the directed energy weapons today, could it be that the mafia and the Vatican is involved? And could it be, as I said all along, that the really big asset stripping exercise could actually be going on? So I think that's the question to ask. I don't know. Ramola seems to have dropped out. I'm not sure if people could actually follow. You're still there, Karen, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Ramola's back.
I'm back.
Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
Oh,
I
it's
have a
1:30.
very interesting intruder right in my neighbor's driveway, and I wanted to get a picture of that.
I'm glad you
And
did.
I did. So, you know, it's the local landscape artist sent straight from the Masons, probably. Because this guy started to come around, park his red truck filled with his witchy rakes turned upside down and, you know, hoisted in the back. And with his little weaponry, his plausible deniability weapons with a little radar spinning inside of them, he sticks them around, and then I'm being hit. You know, he keeps it right in the driveway, and I can feel the flicker of the radar on my body. But he comes by, makes a big deal out of, you know, whether it's rain time or snow time or leaf time, he's blowing things. He's blowing snow, he's blowing leaves, he's raking, he's oh so arduous, you know, and he's pulling out his very noisy instruments. By the way, this is the same guy whom I caught the other morning in my driveway on the other side, and I went and had a good yell at him because he was making one heck of a racket at 7 in the morning, and or was it 8? He told me it's 8 o'clock. I can do it. And I'm like, what does that mean? So actually, I called the police. I called Quincy Police. And I told them what was going on. And I said, what's the law, generally speaking? Can people just come and make, you know, this huge racket with these leaf blowers that are super ultra loud? Can they actually get away with that? You know, isn't there a decibel volume thing? Isn't there a law about it? You know, isn't there a certain level of decibels that can be, you know, tolerated in a neighborhood, etc.? So this woman who answered the phone, you know, the police woman who answered the phone said, not really, not for landscaping.
Oh, I've got it, Ramona. You will do a quick trainee exercise, which can't last longer than 2 months. You will become a landscape artist, and then you will have a Boeing engine So, because that's like the modern landscaping. It's incorporating technology into nature because that's the transhumanist thing. And you have a Boeing engine blowing at your neighbors 24/7 because there are no regulations, right? So why not?
There's no regulations. You're right. I could do precisely that. I could have Boeing engines on either side. So, when this guy does it, I start this one up. And when that guy does it, I start that one up. And it could be a tit for tat fest, right? I could do that all day long. But literally, I have better things to do. I mean, these guys, this is what they are doing. They're engaging in noise harassment of the most extreme kind, So I'm so sorry I missed the latter part of what you were talking about regarding
because you basically took what I was saying about the 18th century where everybody's dead already, to now, which is exactly what's going on, And I was thinking, I'm aware of the time, and I'm also aware that you have to leave, Ramola, but I also wanted to say that it is now, do we have, I'm not sure, do we have a show on the 28th? I think we do, right?
Next week, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that will be still there's one more show about before the new year starts. So maybe we wanted to have a discussion about what we wanted to do on Techno Forum next year, but maybe we do that next week.
Yes, maybe we do that next time because we are running out of time at this point. We probably should wrap up pretty soon. So if anybody has, last minute things to say and things to round off the show with, go for it.
Go ahead, Katherine.
Oh, what me?
I'm throwing it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. My last words. My last words, because it's Christmas. So what's coming up is Christmas. Okay. So do be aware that there are two separate versions of Christmas because it's all about, the duality. If you're in Freemason, Illuminati, Mafia world, there's a duality. And there's Christmas, which is all about, the birth of Jesus Christ, right? Like sometimes being an atheist, I get it wrong. Christmas is not the time he got crucified. It's when Christmas, that's when he was born. Okay, so I got that one right. But it's true. There is, right? This is about birth, about hope, right? The birth of hope, basically. This is what Christmas is about, the way I understand it. And there's this version of Christmas. And then there's the consumerist Christmas, which is celebrating Santa. And my best friend is a Muslim. I'm an atheist. And we used to exchange presents because that was just a done thing in Germany at the time. At some point, I joked, you know what? Santa, we're celebrating both Santa because that's something a Muslim and an atheist can agree on, that we're just, we're celebrating Santa. And at the time I didn't actually think, hang on, Santa, Satan, consumerism. And because none of us were so engaged in consumerism, it was literally just a gesture between her and me of exchanging presents and actually saying to each other as friends, hey, you know what, it was jolly good that you were around last year as my best friend, here's something, and let's do it. And this is the way we celebrated Christmas. Now, over the years, we grew more and more together, and we've seen more, from this world. And the more I look at it, the more we stop giving each other presents, and instead we actually meet up over Christmas and we discuss everything that happened in the previous year, and we think about how to help each other. So that's the way a Muslim and an atheist are celebrating, Christmas these days. And we stopped engaging in the consumerist side that basically these big corporations want us to do. And we engage in the thing of what can we ourselves put into the world to help each other and help other people. And that's usually what we do. And, I think this is what we should be doing this Christmas as well.
I think that's wonderful. I think it was really well presented. And I was just going to say, I hope next year that we will really, really have something outstanding to be thankful for at Thanksgiving and also at Christmas. Because I'm declaring this Christmas our last one in captivity. So anybody who is prone to praying, then do claim it and pray it with me, that this is it. This is the last Christmas that is dampened by this ever again. All right, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And like I said, 2018, I think, is going to be a great year. You guys take care.
That's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. Yes, I think that's the way to go. Just claim it. This has to be the last year. I do think that this year, even though we didn't really spend too much time, kind of doing a retrospective or whatever, which we'll do next week, I feel that we've accomplished a great deal in terms of mentally and consciousness-wise getting the message out there that this is indeed going on and that it's execrable. And what we're doing now is trying to find out who exactly is doing it. You know, within the intelligence agencies, within law enforcement, who is it? And we're beginning to find out there are people called Masonists, and there are people called Satanists and Luciferians, and these people are just worshippers of death and destruction and money and power. So, which is apparently the flip side of death and destruction to their pathologically insane minds. So I think we've made great progress for us to be saying this at the end of this year, because, you know, literally when we started at the beginning of this year, this is not where we were. We were kind of exploring a great deal. But now we can say this unequivocally, and we can move forward from this point, you know, because literally as a journalist, I feel completely within my rights to explore this. To me, it's not fringe, it's not conspiracy theory, it's fact. I'm just exploring the facts here, you know, and I'm going to keep exploring as much of this as I can delve into in order to expose it, because I think we as humanity need to grasp with the utter absolute truth of what's hit our societies and what's taken over our societies. You know, deep captured, as Katherine says, deep captured our societies, infiltrated and taken over, in order to discover ways of combating this and moving on, and, you know, recreating really the kind of paradise that the good people of the world with integrity and conscience can create, you know, that we all have the power to collectively create, you know, a wholesome society, a society that's for life and living and not for death and destruction. So that's my hope. And I claim what Karen says, you know, this is the last year, and we're at a tremendous point right now, and I can only see us going forward and only good things, you know, growth, life, green, everything beautiful happening in the future. So on that note, Merry Christmas, everybody, and enjoy the holidays with your family, and may you have less fights and more cheer. And we'll see you all next week, before the old year rolls out entirely.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas.